Hey guys, we are back, and today we wanted to talk with you about and just kind of share our experiences with, and just in general have a discussion, Brianna and I, about shutdown horses. So, horses that are in a really internalized shutdown state, often associated with learned helplessness. And right away, what I think would be beneficial is to define or to discuss how to recognize a horse that is in a shutdown state and what that looks like behaviorally, as well as we're going to be diving into supporting horses that are in a shutdown state, talking about lifestyle training and more. So, yeah, let's just dive right in. Brianna, what would you say are some of the ways that you recognize a horse that's in a shutdown state?
Of course. So when I'm looking at any horse that I'm meeting for the first time and I'm watching out for some of these signs, I think it's important to recognize that it can be really easy without really training your eye to confuse or
Like mistake.
mistake a good, well-behaved horse for a horse that's actually in a state of learned helplessness or a shutdown. And the reason for this is because when horses are in a state of learned helplessness, they really enter this repressed emotional state where they're just trying to survive. They're not really expressing themselves. They've been taught that any opinion that they have is not worthy of being heard. And so they become very biddable, they become very robotic, and our equestrian society has been conditioned to view these horses as good horses, but oftentimes there's something deeper going on underneath. So the signs can be really subtle, whether they're just kind of dull and lethargic, they don't have that spark in their eye. They might be really a little bit slow to respond to cues. They'll respond eventually, but it might take them some time to have that get up. These are those horses that you might call lazy or dull or
Every
hard
lesson
mannered,
pony out there, every lesson pony out there, yeah.
right? That will just cart the kids along without too much fuss, but it definitely, they're like a stick and spur ride. They're not going to offer anything of their own accord because they've learned that it's safer to just shut up and put up and get the job done. I also see horses who are really bomb proof, quote unquote, and have a minimal response to any kind of surprise stimuli. If something flaps in the corner of the arena, they might not respond at all. If a companion gets taken away from their herd, they're really just inclined to be very level, not having too many emotional peaks. And this is, in my opinion, very different than a horse who's thriving and is responsive and a good horse. So we need to learn how to look out for these subtle signs and not mistake the two.
Yeah. So another way that's easy, or another thing that's easy to mistake with, is a horse that's sleeping or tired, resting. I see a lot of situations where a horse is tied up or standing in the middle of the arena with, on the other end of the lead rope, and they look like they're dozing off. And in a lot of the cases, a lot of times, this is not the case. They are shutting down, they're going internal. I mean, we can literally think of it as what should be expressing on the outside, like how they feel, that should be leaving their body in through behavior and communication. So their ears moving, their eyes, taking in the environment, their nostrils moving, subtle, soft, communicative behavior has shut off from the world and has gone inside and into the body. And we are just not seeing any of that. They're not communicating at all. They're not engaging in their environment as much, at least. And they can seem either, like you said, really bomb proof, good horses that are just kind of tuning out the world and just tolerate and cope with everything and anything. Or it can look like a horse that's just kind of lazy or restful or relaxed, or will just stand in the middle of the arena for a long time at the other end of the lead rope and not have like any type of engagement with the people, with their environment. And as you mentioned, mistakenly, the equestrian community as a whole has unfortunately adopted this a lot of times as the sign of a well-trained, a maid, or a good horse. Um, while I would argue that, of course, that horse is trying very hard to be good. and doing what is asked of them. This shouldn't be the representative, this the ideal, the thing that we're looking for and to create in our horses, because they're still experiencing all of the emotions. They're still fearful of the novel stimuli that just shows up out of nowhere. They're still worried about the training. They're still experiencing all of these feelings. It's all just trapped on the inside and they're not expressing it. And so they're really shut off from, and they're not having that open conversation with their handlers.
And there are physical repercussions and drawbacks to this mentality that horses adopt when they aren't outwardly expressing their fear, their worry, their concern. It gets trapped in the body. And these are the horses that, as a body worker, I go and see, and they're holding so much tension within their body because those emotions, they need somewhere to go, and the fascia holds on to emotions. We can also sometimes see that these horses are really prone to a digestive upset if they're internalizing their stress and it's expressing itself as colic or ulcer like symptoms or loose stool. Those emotions and those feelings have to go somewhere, and often they end up trapped in their physical body.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening will have experienced this yourself. I know I do. I'll be thinking I'm fine. Actually, this recently happened to me where I'm like, yeah, I'm doing okay. We've got this thing going on. Like, I know like normally would be stressed about the situation, or maybe I do feel like maybe I'm a little bit stressed, but I'm doing okay or whatever. But then all of a sudden I start having gut problems and or I'm not able to sleep as well at night, or all of a sudden I've got like all this tension and I need to I'm like, man, I need some body work or I need a massage or something. And even though I'm acting as maybe society would accept as well behaved. I'm doing my job. I'm meeting deadlines. I'm socializing properly. I'm meeting all expectations. All of those feelings are just like bottling up on the inside, like, and they're showing up in a physical way. And this happens with our horses too. Yeah. And
And
go ahead.
it's important to learn how to recognize those things. And even though as horse owners, we aren't necessarily trained to be able to palpate our horses and feel if they're experiencing muscle tension, we can still watch out for those subtle physical signs like stiffness at the gait or trouble doing lateral work or trouble with their undersaddle things. It still shows up in the body, even if you're not able to run hands over the horse and feel where they're holding tension. There are these subtle expressions of pain and tension within the body that you can train your eye to look out for.
I have a story from not too long ago where I had somebody talking to me about their horse, how she was a mare that they would take on trail rides and do endurance rides with, and she was doing well and they were making progress according to the caregiver, the owner, and um they were confused though as to why every time they would take her somewhere she would get really runny stools. And immediately, like the minute they would step onto the trailer, we've got runny stools. And it would take a couple days afterwards for her gut to clear back up. And it was interesting to hear, and this is so common. I mean, even myself not too long ago would have said the same thing. She's fine. She's behaving well. She's not spooky. She doesn't, she gets into the trailer just fine. All of these behaviors, all the check boxes were there. But we had gut problems every time we did these events. And so it, we would have conversations around maybe she's not showing you quite as much of how she's feeling. And she's being very biddable. She's very obedient about doing the things and wanting to, check those boxes off for you and do the behaviors. But she's also experiencing this stress, this feeling these emotions. And maybe it's fear, anxiety, whatever it is, and it's showing up in her body. So that's a sign that we need to make some adjustments, that we need to help her and see if we can break things down for her and support her more and help her feel more comfortable, and also offer her more gut support during those experiences, because we can't avoid all stress in a horse's life, but we can help them and we can help prepare them for it and listen to their very subtle communication. So another part of that process was me observing the horse and helping the caregiver start to read earlier signs, very subtle shifts in the horse's behavior that indicated that she was starting to be stressed. And the if the caregiver is more educated in those subtle behaviors, the subtle forms of communication, we can avoid these long term bigger issues like, really holding all that tension in the body. And it can show up as, I'm sure it can show up as a lot of things, not just the gut support and the tension, but I'm sure it could end up in injury and something more severe later on, lameness and such, as well as it can show up from a behavior perspective in really explosive, dangerous behavior. If it's not recognized and supported earlier on, eventually the horse will hit their threshold and they can't handle it anymore. And then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere, these big behaviors that we don't want to see. Well-behaved horses before all of a sudden are not safe to be around and to do what we used to be able to do with them.
Yeah. And that's the thing about learned helplessness is it's not a state that the body can maintain for long term. It's
Mm,
designed, the horse enters a state of learned helplessness. If we're talking about horses in the wild, they will enter this tonic immobility state moments before the predator latches on and goes in for that final kill. They're not designed to live in this state for days and weeks and months on end. It has repercussions, and it often ends poorly one way or the other for the horse and their handler. And what you're talking about, Adele, recognizing those signs and seeing them in the behaviors and in the body brought to my mind another sign that we can watch out for. When horses are having a stressful event, it will show up in their body. It'll show up in their hooves. I'm sure you've seen this with your horses. Um, when they have a stressful event, if they're not able to fully express it and fully move through their emotional process, that inflammatory cascade will actually trigger inflammation with their hooves, and we'll see it grow out as an event line.
hmm
And it's not that we're trying to prevent our horses from having emotions through recognizing these subtle key precursor behaviors. We're aiming to help them learn how to process them in safe and healthy ways. The goal with any kind of training isn't to shut down emotions entirely or to make it so that our horses never achieve stress. No, we got to find that balance where our horses are able to metabolize stress and move through stressful situations and not have it become trapped in the body.
And one, I completely agree with that. It's not about trying to completely bubble wrap the world so that our horses never experience stress. It's about preparing them for the inevitable stressful events and helping them learn how to move through that and giving them the space to be able to do that
Oh,
and supporting them through that process, because it's just life that happens. And as caregivers and trainers and body workers and all of, so on and so forth, it's our responsibility to be able to read their body language and recognize when they're communicating to us that they're feeling stressed and not intentionally push them to the point where they go to the state of, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to internalize and shut down because I feel like I'm dying right now. Like that's what the body is doing when it enters that state. It's a protective stage of the body and or the nervous system. And unfortunately, there's a lot of ways that we can inadvertently, unintentionally, in most cases, especially if we've learned how to interact with horses in this way, and this is how we've been taught, or in the horse community, we see it represented everywhere. To make a well-trained horse, we have to push them past that threshold and keep pushing until they submit or become biddable or do what we're asking them to do. And that is preventing them from processing all of that stress. And we're pushing them past the point where they can properly, not properly, in a healthy way, experience the stress and then recover, right? We're pushing them way into that red zone, way past what they can naturally recover from where they're at, and then creating these traumatic events, and then causing them to be especially if it's a repeat thing that's happening over and over again, they will become quicker and quicker and quicker to until they're almost perpetually in a learned helpless state, in a shutdown state when interacting with people and in their environment, even just in life, even. Um, and there's so much nuance to this conversation, and it's really something that I hope is more openly talked about, and we start having more practical, or we start seeing people practicing ways to support their horses when they are experiencing stress versus pushing them through it and just kind of keep moving forward through it without stopping and helping the horse so that we don't see all these potentially lifelong side effects from this emotional state.
For sure. Well, how many of us have been conditioned and taught to move about our interactions with horses in a disembodied way? You know,
Mm.
we're taught to leave our emotions at the gate and really suppress it all down. And this is the way that you interact with horses. And there's only one way. So,
Or ride through, like if you get thrown, right, get back on the horse.
yeah,
Forget that you're afraid. Don't think about the fact that you're terrified right now or hurting or in pain. You got to get
yeah.
back on and you got to keep moving. You got to keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea that neither horse nor rider is allowed to have any emotions or feelings is really pervasive throughout the whole horse world. And I think that we're getting there. We're seeing some shifts happening, but recognizing that we have emotions that we need to express, and it's okay to
Mhm.
have those emotions show up in your training as much as it is okay for your horse to have emotions show up in your training. We just need to learn how to process those emotions and
I mean,
deal with
that's
them.
really it, like in a nutshell, right? Like a lot of horse training doesn't, in a lot of just ways of interacting with horses, treats the idea of horses having emotions and reactions as a bad thing. It's an untrained horse. It's not a respectful horse. It's a horse that needs more training, that needs to, just deal with whatever we want them to deal with. They just need to take whatever we throw at them, and they're not allowed to react. They're not allowed to have emotions or experience, how they're feeling. And for riders too. But it's just like you said, it's just so pervasive in the equestrian community, the mindset. Um, when emotions are good, I mean, we experience them whether we want to or not, one. And then two, if we demonize them and make it so that our horses are not allowed to, we act like they're not allowed to have them, we're just creating robots, and we're just creating these shells of beings that are just internalizing everything. And it has such an impact on their relationship with us, our relationship with them, their overall well-being, their overall quality of life, and also has very real side effects as far as like training results and safety concerns as well when we're dealing with very large animals that could explode out of nowhere, when all of a sudden these emotions can't be bottled up anymore and they're coming out, um, as well as, of course, physical repercussions like we've been talking about in their
For
body.
sure. And you
So,
can't
oh, go
have
ahead.
and you can't have a two-way relationship with a being that can't say no. That's not a relationship. That's a dictatorship.
Yep. So how can we, now that we've discussed kind of what it looks like when a horse is in a shutdown state and how prevalent it is and why we don't want it, how can we support horses through a shutdown state? So let's say somebody has, and we'll, come up with we have some different ideas and we want to share with you guys different ways that we can support our horses. But let's say you have a horse that you're identifying as that they suppress a lot, that they're shut down in their interactions with you, and maybe just in day-to-day life. Maybe they're just in a perpetual kind of learned helpless, shut down, internalized state. What are some of the things that we can do to help these horses heal and to start to communicate again and to start to wake back up or kind of reanimate, like start to express themselves again and to feel safe in their own body and safe in the world? What are some of the things that we can do?
I think the biggest thing is going to be giving them a choice and showing them that it is safe to express that choice and to take that choice into every aspect of their daily life, whether that is interacting out in their field, whether that's interacting with their human in a training context. These horses who have really been shown that their voice and energy change in their environment, we can learn how to re-express themselves and through training and lifestyle and body work as well. That's really important. The way that we're training our horses is really key in allowing them the consent. Is such a nuanced topic in the horse world, but it just comes down to learning how to recognize those subtle emotional shifts and then responding accordingly. In your everyday training, a non-negotiable. You don't have to force your horse through a ride or a training session or XYZ. You know, we can recognize these subtle emotional shifts and then back off with our expectations or our criteria or our pressure before the horse starts to escalate into either increasingly stressed out behaviors or alternatively internalizing and becoming shut down. So learning to recognize those subtle behavior shifts like tension in the eye, tension in the ears, turning their head away, becoming a little bit more slower, a little bit more latent to respond to cues. Maybe they're starting to disengage from your training session. These are all things we can learn to watch out for and then adjust our expectations and our criteria accordingly. And Adele, you've got so much more training experience that I'm sure you can dive into giving us some real life examples of this as well.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of think about it is when it comes to our interactions with the horses. So let's say we're in a training session or even just hanging out with our horses, and this would also apply to body work as well. Um, it's about acknowledging that the horse has emotions and that they have feelings about things, right? And showing them that we hear them, that we see it. We see, or like, okay, you did a little shift in your eye. Like I see a little wrinkle there. I'm going to acknowledge that and I'm going to make adjustments to support you. And especially when you have a horse that's really shut down, that's probably all you're going to get. Like you're going to get these little tiny, barely obvious forms of communication. It's going to be really hard to identify at first. You might see a little wrinkling of the eye. You might see some widening of the nostrils. You might see some pressing of the lips and some tightening of the chin. You might see a little bit of an elevation in the neck. You might see a little tail swish, a little tiny head turn. Really anything that is leading towards my horse is a little bit worried. When we're working with a horse that is more expressive or communicative, that has had a choice for a long time and it has been well respected, and they're confident communicators. Those little signs are going to actually be little, meaning that the horse is only feeling a subtle or a little bit of some tension, right? And as they start to accumulate, so as you start to see more and you're starting to see, like, let's say you see a tail swish, the eye wrinkling, the chin press, and a head turn with a little bit of eye widening and the ears go out to the side all at one time. Well, a horse that is very expressive and communicative, that's when I start to be like, okay, we're really starting to get more stressed and worried here. Versus when you have a horse that's been historically very shut down and doesn't communicate openly, if I'm seeing some eye wrinkling or a tail swish, just like one at a time, maybe two, I'm like, okay, this is, we're in the yellow. Like I'm actually really excited that they're communicating with me, and I need to take this very seriously, because that actually probably means they're further along in their fear or worry or whatever than we even realize, because they haven't been openly communicating with us. And now they're starting to. And then the important thing is to go, okay, I see you. I see that. I'm going to back off, or I'm going to, whatever it is, the next steps are that the horse needs for you to, for them to feel supported, for them to feel safe. and we need to make big gestures basically to gain their trust, to start expressing to them that we hear them and we are worth trusting and that they can feel safe around us. And over time, they will start to become more expressive. They'll start to feel safer in communicating with you, and you will start to have a more transparent conversation back and forth, their body language and your interactions with them too. Um, so it's really cool to see horses go from that shutdown state to a more expressive state. And I refer to it as unpacking. And um, that unpacking process can be difficult in a lot of ways, but also really beautiful in a lot of ways. It's not a linear process, meaning that you might have a really good day and then you might have a not so great day. And it's just going to keep, cycling back and forth as the horse heals and as you start to learn too, to read your horse's body language. Because, you're learning too. You're in a learning process and you may not always be on top of your game listening to your horse because you're just still learning. And that will get better as you have more experience and you practice more. And then just the whole process, that up and down, and learning to read the body language and making those adjustments, and then really being excited about and celebrating those little moments where your horse starts communicating with you, even if it means no, even if it means you don't get to do the thing you want to do that day. Let's say you wanted to go out on a trail ride and your horse decides to swing their hip away when you line up at the mounting block. That in the moment is going to feel, it's going to feel frustrating because you wanted to go out on a trail ride. You've been looking forward to it, especially if there's any pressure of like your friends came out to ride with you, whatever. But if your horse has been reluctant to communicate with you and all of a sudden gives you that big of a communication, it's a full blown celebration and you need to respect it and to not get on at that moment. And maybe later, well, there's a lot of different factors that can go into this, but that would be an example of how we can start to honor our horses' communications and honor how they feel and start to demonstrate through our actions and our behavior that we hear them, that we respect them, and that we hear their no. And that then reinforces those communications and encourages them to communicate more openly with you going forward. And will build a stronger relationship, a stronger partnership, and more trust in that relationship. And your horse will start to trust you more. But just know that in a lot of cases, it feels worse before it gets feeling better. And that I would be expecting that. I would be prepared for that. But where we go and where we're going to, and kind of where it will get to, is such an amazing place to be with your horse. And probably it's just going to take your partnership together to that next level and just be an amazing experience together. But yeah, that's kind of, I kind of went off on a bunny trail there. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that the whole mindset of viewing our horses no as something that is such a beautiful piece of information and will lead to a stronger relationship down the road is really important because especially if our horses have been biddable and responsive and a good horse and all of a sudden they're starting to say no, they're starting to show us how they truly feel, it can be really hard on us. We can go through a lot of guilt, we can go through a lot of doubt our own ability as horse owners, and it can be an emotion, and I'm not discounting that and saying that these no's lead to something bigger and something better for your past. You're here for your horse now and supporting them to the best of your ability, and things are to come.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so as we're wrapping up, let's go through like some quick practical things that people can do to help their horses today, besides just reading the body language and making adjustments there. Um, so we've got a list here of some different things that we can do. of course, we started with giving them more choice in the training and like respecting that body language. But let's talk about like specifics of what that could look like. We've got lifestyle to start off with. Um, Offering them a more enriched environment that supports natural engagement. So, building their curiosity, getting them to explore their environment through enrichment, through varied terrain, offering, having good companions with them, um, diversifying their resources and offering varied locations for those resources so they can select and choose where they want their hay, what kind of hay they want, where they want their water, what kind of water they want, where they, which companions they want to interact with, which ones they don't. Things like this can start to encourage them to open up and start making decisions and expressing how they feel, as well as just helping them re-engage in life and just be participating again. Um, yeah, do you have any other suggestions when it comes to lifestyle that comes to mind?
Those are all really great and things that I will implement myself when I'm working with a horse. I think the key thing to remember as well when we're starting to integrate these lifestyles, going slow and going at the horse's pace. It can be really easy to learn about all these new things and go, horse, here's 900 choices in your day when you've had none.
Zero.
You've
Yeah.
had, I go out of my stall at 8 a.m. and I come back in my stall at 8 p.m. and I got breakfast and dinner and I get a horse in my 20 by 20 flat square. And then other horses on outdoor board all the time and their minds are just blown. It's
Mm.
a huge adjustment and a huge change. And we do it with the best of intentions, but oftentimes that can be for horses. So allowing flexibility within this can really help our horses through this process, whether that's gradually starting in the amount of time that they're outside and allowing them to lead day by day, even giving them choice in when they want to come in and when they want to stay out. That's another way we can start to empower them and offer them choice, giving them choice as to what companions they're out with. Some days to being out with 10 other horses if that's an emotional overwhelm. And I realize that sometimes we don't have this flexibility when we're at boarding facilities, but there's still lots of can do, like offering them these enrichment activities and doing our best to resources and really working at their pace and working where they're comfortable with on their day-to-day preferences.
Yes, I completely agree with that because we can definitely overwhelm them and cause being shut down in a different way through good intentions because they're just like, this is way too much. I cannot handle all of this. So doing it in approximations, so small bits at a time, and just add as your horse is ready and not feeling overwhelmed. That is really good thoughts there to add because that is definitely something I've done in the past where I'm just like, here, new horse, all the things. And they're like, oh my gosh.
You get
Um,
excited and it's
yeah.
done with the best intent, but it can be hard for the horse for sure.
So from a training perspective, listening to the body language, listening to what they're communicating and making adjustments, of course. But there's also other things we can do. If you haven't already heard of it, cooperative care is something that's really powerful. Even if you don't change all of your training, even if you continue to ride, it just how you've always done in your lessons and stuff, um, integrating training sessions with a cooperative care mindset or just straight up cooperative care with clicker training, positive reinforcement can be really powerful in helping re-empower your horse and to build their confidence and get them communicating with you and making choices and giving them that opportunity to have a choice. And there's no consequences. There's no aversive consequences to not, touching the target or whatever it is. And it gives them more of a voice with cooperative care. We're able to create a dialogue through behavior where the horse clearly understands if I do this behavior, then this happens. And if I don't do this behavior, then that thing doesn't happen. And so they get to have a very clear and obvious choice, and you respect that choice. So we can do training sessions that, even if it's only a couple times a week or one time a week for a few minutes, learning how to train with cooperative care can be really helpful in supporting your horse as a whole. Encouraging and reinforcing curiosity. This is something that's really important to me and something I really encourage in my horses. And one of the number one signs that I look for in a horse that is in a shutdown state, if they are not wanting to engage in their environment and explore new things and look for food in the environment, which is a totally normal behavior, even though sometimes we're annoyed by our horses wanting to go get grass, it's very normal. And if my horse is not showing any interest in doing that, I start to get a little concerned. Um, so showing curiosity and in exploring the environment is something that I very much encourage and will help your horse a lot. Um, Time with your horse without having expectations can be something that's really valuable. And while not necessarily a hands-on structured training session, it falls into this category because it's an interaction with us and behaviors are, things are being learned. And so just spending time with your horse outside of a structured training session where you're just hanging out with them in the pasture, living their life with them and like kind of just jumping into their world and being part of it and finding value in spending time with them in the way that they want to spend their time versus always expecting them to do what we want to do all the time can be a really valuable thing to do with our horses that can help them and can help with building that trust and building that confidence in just being around us, but also in life in general. Do you have anything to add to that section?
I love your point about spending time with them outside of training expectations. I think that's a really key part of this process because our horses can get so conditioned into waiting for us to cue them before they respond and giving them the opportunity to be with us without that expectation and without that request for any behavior to be perfect can really help them unpack and help them learn that they can take ownership over their own behavior and start to do things without managing every step, because that can happen for a lot of these horses is they literally will not until they're told otherwise.
Yep. All right, I'm going to let you take the topic on body work.
All right. This, in my opinion, is such a part of supporting horses through the process because oftentimes everything that they've suppressed is being held in their body and being held in fascia. The fascia stores emotions, and those emotions have to go somewhere. Expressing our emotions, they don't just disappear. They get held in the body, and the body keeps. I love that book. It's amazing, and it applies to our horses too. So the key with body work, though, is same principle to lifestyle and training. They have to have a choice in their body work. We're doing for them and with them as opposed to doing body work to them. Because if a practitioner comes in and says, okay, horse, you have to get tied to the fence and I'm going to 45 minutes and then you're good and you're done and you've gotten your body work. Now we've helped you. For the shutdown horse, that might not actually be helpful. That might be one more affirmation that control over their body. And it's only going to further perpetuate that cycle. So shutdown horses are really delicate balance of doing a couple of protocols and then allowing to integrate in time to process and working at their own pace and looking those subtle behavior indicators and body language signs that tell us horse is feeling. When I'm on a sore spot with a horse that's shut down, I might not be getting a response like I would from a horse who isn't shut down. And so I have to learn to look for that really subtle indication. And it doesn't always mean back off because times it can be supportive for horses to learn how to work through in their body, and that when the body worker is out momentarily feels good later when they can sit with it. I'm not trying to flood the nervous system. So sessions starting out with a shutdown horse might be like 10, 15 minutes. I'm only doing as much as their nervous system can handle. And then gradually build their capacity. The other thing I want to add to this too is involved in the bodywork process can be really beneficial because often there's shared trauma there, and getting the owner into a place where they can really ground and offer their horse body work can help further allow the horse consent and autonomy over the healing process, because now not only is an outside practitioner involved with it, they're too, and their human can start to learn to recognize those subtle body changes and shifts in their posture and in their musculature that might be some indicators that we're having a bad day. So I really love and believe in owner education as a key part of this.
Yeah, that learning how to be able to do body work with my own horses has been really helpful in our just our partnership and in our communication. And for some of my horses, they don't particularly care for having outsiders working on them in such a vulnerable way. And so it's been a way that I've been able to support them because we have more of a relationship and they are able to, open up a little bit more and trust a little bit more. Um, but yeah, this is all really wonderful information. And I want to reiterate before we wrap up today for this topic is that your horse shutting down or being internalized or just kind of suppressing how they feel. Um, it's very, very common. It's sadly very, very common. And it's not necessarily a reflection on anything you have done right now. Maybe it's from before. Maybe also you did it and something we don't know. And don't beat yourself up about it. It's a learning process. We're all on a journey. I have been actively a part of shutting down many horses in the past and been part of lots of very harsh handling techniques and training techniques. And I've caused a lot of harm. And I learned from all those and have grown and am now able to use everything I've learned to help support my horses now. And I'm very thankful for those learning opportunities now. And just know too that it is, again, I'm going to reiterate, it's not linear and it's going to take time. And try not to take anything personally as your horse is starting to unpack and express how they feel. It's not about you personally. And you can really be there to help support your horse and further that healing journey by being caring and neutral and supportive in that experience for your horse, and just kind of keep moving forward. And if you get stuck or if you're feeling concerned or worried, definitely reach out to a professional that is trauma informed, that can help you, that is preferably like a behavior consultant, somebody who really understands what horse behavior and supporting horses through this process, as well as helping their caregivers through the process too. So thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you, Brianna, too, for having this discussion with me. We're going to go ahead and wrap up here. So thank you guys so much.